Welcome to the Thriving Scapegoat, a podcast for women who are cast as the problem, when in truth, they were the truth tellers. I'm your host, Julie Cielo, somatic coach, author, and guide for women healing from complex trauma, family enmeshment, and the invisible wounds of being scapegoated. If you ever felt misunderstood, exiled, or blamed for dynamics you didn't create, if you've done the deep work to break the generational patterns and you're ready to reclaim your voice, your body, and your life, you're in the right place. This is where we stop over-explaining, stop performing for love, and start living in alignment with what's real. Here, we talk about nervous system healing, shadow work, emotional sovereignty, and what it takes to not just survive your past, but thrive beyond it. Because you were never too much. You were never the problem. You were the disruption to the dysfunction, and now you get to become the woman who rises because of it. Let's begin.
Welcome back to the Thriving Scapegoat. This episode is probably one of the most important conversations that I've had in this podcast so far because I want to talk about something that completely blindsided me in my healing journey. And honestly, I don't hear enough people talking about it. It happens when you finally leave the dysfunctional system and you go to therapy and meditate and do all the stuff, becoming self-aware, and then suddenly years later, the harshest voice you've ever experienced in your life begins emerging from your own mind. Not immediately, not during the chaos, but after. After going no contact, after doing a million successful things, after the adrenaline wears off, after the survival identity begins collapsing. That's what I want to talk about today. Because I think many women secretly believe that healing should feel freeing. And honestly, sometimes it does. But there's a season after survival ends where you might feel profoundly untethered, disoriented, and you don't understand the nervous system. You might mistake this for failure instead of transformation. For years, I thought I was healing, which I was. For most of my adult life, I generally believed I was healing. In many ways, I was. I had done a lot of things to help change my circumstances. And honestly, spirituality changed my life. I still teach these practices and I still value them deeply. They gave me awareness, discipline, perspective, moments of transcendence and connection to something larger than myself. But honestly, without those practices, I don't know I would have actually survived certain parts of my life. Survival and embodiment are not always the same thing. And that distinction took me years to understand. Because while I was meditating and building businesses and functioning at high levels, there was still a tremendous amount happening in my nervous system that I didn't feel fully. Not because I was incapable, but because my body and my nervous system was protecting me in an old survival pattern. This is where healing conversations become oversimplified online. People talk about awakening like it's some kind of linear ascent into peace, but trauma survivors initially become disconnected before they can become embodied. And that is an important distinction, especially for women leaving dysfunctional family systems. So right now, I want you to notice something. Take a breath into the belly. Notice how often during the day that you actually become aware of your body. Not controlling it or improving it, not judging it, but inhabiting it. Most people are not embodied. They're mentally managing themselves constantly, and that is not presence. That is surveillance. Many scapegoats become masters of self-surveillance. So I want to talk about why the inner critic got louder. I was shocked by this. It wasn't until several years ago that I went no contact, about a decade ago. I closed my last business and then I left my marriage almost 14 years ago, but the harsh inner critic became unbearable. It made no sense to me. How is it possible that I had removed myself from so many toxic environments and done the brave things, the conscious things, the spiritually mature things, and suddenly I felt so disconnected from myself? How did that voice become louder? What I realized was that for most of my life that my nervous system had become organized around survival, achievement, productivity, caretaking, performing, managing. And those things are not random. They were regulating to me. The constant movement kept me from feeling what was underneath. And when the movement stopped, the freeze underneath became visible. Not collapse exactly, but functional freeze. This is deeply misunderstood because people think that freeze means I can't get out of bed, I'm completely shut down and not able to function. No. Many women in functional freeze are incredibly productive. They're in charge of a lot of things. They work, exercise, raise children, build businesses, go to therapy, they meditate. But internally, there's a numbness, a disconnection, emotional flatness, a difficulty feeling pleasure, desire, aliveness. And because it doesn't look dramatic externally, it often goes unnoticed for years, especially in high-functioning women. I also think that we need to talk more honestly about what happens after estrangement, because social media often portrays no contact as instant liberation. And honestly, sometimes there's some relief, absolutely. But what can happen afterwards, especially for scapegoats, is a profound identity unraveling. Because if your nervous system spent decades organizing around anticipating others, managing dynamics and performing roles, staying hyper aware, who are you without that? Really, who are you when survival stops directing your life? That question can feel terrifying. I remember periods after no contact where I felt completely disconnected from society, like I was observing life more than participating in it. And honestly, there were moments where I wondered, have I become too detached, too different, too far outside the normal? But looking back now, I understand that I couldn't see something then. My nervous system was actually thawing slowly. And thawing doesn't feel euphoric. The body is finally starting to feel. It can be terrorizing. Grief, loneliness, anger, fear, exhaustion, old addictions or old coping mechanisms coming in because you can't focus on positive thinking anymore. The nervous system needs space where the survival was interrupted. I want you to know you are not that voice. One of the most profound shifts in my own healing happened when I stopped trying to fix the inner critic and started becoming more curious about the nervous system underneath it. When the voice itself isn't the deepest truth. It was just a survival adaptation, a monitoring system, an attempt to maintain safety through constant self-correction. And this is where somatic experiencing changed everything dramatically for me. Not giving me better thoughts, but teaching me how to stay present with the sensation long enough to stop self-abandoning. That is embodiment. That is not transcending the body, not escaping emotion, but staying. And slowly over time, something incredible started happening. The space between awareness and thought expanded, and I realized I am aware of the thought, which means I can't fundamentally be the thought, which I knew from meditation. The thought moves, the sensation moves, and the nervous system shifts, but awareness itself remains. Inside that awareness is a different relationship to self, and then the inner confidant can emerge. I don't think that the goal is to completely eliminate the inner critic. The deeper goal is to stop organizing your identity around that voice. Because eventually, after enough embodiment, enough nervous system repair, after enough honest grieving, something else begins to emerge. Self-trust. Not performative confidence, not inflated empowerment language, but quiet self-trust. And honestly, that level of self-trust changes everything. Once you no longer require external validation from anyone because you know who you are, you become incredibly difficult to manipulate. You stop shifting it constantly and over-explaining yourself, negotiating your intuition away. And yes, this makes you dangerous in a society built on insecurity and performance. Not dangerous violently, dangerous because your nervous system can no longer depend on external approval, that's real thriving. Not becoming perfect, not becoming emotionless, not becoming endlessly positive, but thriving when your body no longer experiences your authentic self as a threat. So before we close today, I just want you to notice yourself breathing in your body, in your chair, and the ground beneath you. Notice you are here, and you are not your thoughts, you're not your past, you're not the role that you played. You, awareness itself, you are in the strange in-between season. And after survival, before full embodiment, I want you to know that this season is real, and it does not mean that you're failing. Sometimes the nervous system must first unravel its old identities before a deeper self can emerge, and that process takes time. This is why I created Seasonal Somatics, and why I continue studying somatic experiencing to help women just like you understand the nervous system beneath the suffering. Because thriving is not mindset mastery, it's embodiment. Trace this sense of safety and self-trust and live truth in the body. So in the next episode, we're going to go deeper and talk about how trauma lives physiologically and how to recover truly from complex trauma. This is the Thriving Scapegoat, and this is where survival slowly becomes wholeness. Thank you for being here. See you next time.
If today's episode resonated, that's your entry point. Healing scapegoating isn't just insight, it's nervous system work. And this is what I teach through Seasonal Somatics, a body-based method that helps you regulate, reconnect, and move with real change. I offer weekly group classes, both in-person and online, immersive retreats, and limited one-on-one mentorship. You can find all the details in the show notes. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs it, and make sure you're subscribed. Until next time, choose truth over belonging, self-trust over self-abandonment. You didn't just survive this to stay stuck. You're here to thrive.